The Success System That Never Fails by W. Clement Stone. Picture a tiny 6-year-old boy on a brutal Chicago street corner, teeth chattering in the cold. Bigger kids are everywhere, their voices booming, their elbows sharp as they push him aside and snatch up customers. He's trying to sell newspapers, and every single paper he doesn't sell, that's money lost. Money he borrowed just to buy those papers in the first place. For a 6-year-old, this isn't just disappointing, it's devastating. Most kids would have packed it in and headed home, right? But this little guy did something completely unexpected. He spotted a busy restaurant nearby called Joelle's. It looked warm, prosperous, and honestly pretty intimidating to someone so small. But something clicked in his mind. He sucked in a deep breath, pushed open the door, and sold a paper at the very first table. Then another at the second table, and boom, a third sale. But just as he's strutting toward table number 4, the owner, Mr. Holy himself, grabs him and shoves him straight out the front door. Now here's where life gets interesting. This moment right here, this is where futures are decided. What do you do when you get literally pushed out on your backside? The little boy stood there on the sidewalk with 3 sales jingling in his pocket. He waited until Mr. Hull turned his back, and then he walked right back in, marched straight to that 4th table where a customer, clearly entertained by this kid's sheer audacity, bought a paper and tossed him an extra dime as a tip. And, just like clockwork, Mr. Hull grabbed him and tossed him out again. But now he had 4 sales and a bonus dime. He'd tasted victory. So naturally, what did he do? Walked back in a 3rd time. By now the entire restaurant was cracking up, thoroughly enjoying this little drama. One customer actually shouted, "Let him be!" And in the next 5 minutes flat, he sold every last newspaper he was carrying. That scrappy little boy was W. Clement Stone. And that single afternoon held the blueprint for a system that would eventually catapult him from poverty on Chicago's South Side to running a billion-dollar insurance empire. He didn't realize it at the time, but he'd stumbled onto a formula for success so reliable, so repeatable, that he'd eventually call it the success system that never fails. What if that same formula, that grit, that clever strategy, that unstoppable mindset could work for anyone? Whether you're trying to ace your exams, launch a business, or just become someone who actually follows through on their goals, what if there was an actual system you could follow? That's exactly what this book promises. It's not about getting lucky, it's not about being a genius, it's about having a system. And by the time we're done today, you're going to understand the 3 powerful ingredients that make this system tick. You'll have a treasure map to the riches that matter most in life, and you'll discover they've been hiding somewhere you never thought to look. We all want something, don't we? Doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, there's this hunger inside. For some people, it's money, status, climbing that ladder. For others, it's a loving family, meaningful relationships, or making an actual difference in the world. We all crave health, happiness, fulfillment. These desires are what get us out of bed in the morning. They're the fuel in our tank. But here's life's great puzzle. If everybody wants these things, why do so many people end up spinning their wheels? Why do they wake up years later, standing in the exact same spot they were at 20? Their dreams gathering dust and their potential locked away. W. Clement Stone argues the gap between success and failure isn't some massive canyon. It's actually surprisingly narrow. It's not about being born smarter or more talented. History's great achievers, he says, weren't necessarily any brighter than you or me. They simply figured out how to tap into a power that's already sitting dormant inside every single person. They discovered a system. And Stone's system, refined through decades of real-world testing, rests on 3 core pillars. 3 ideas so straightforward that people often cruise right past them. He calls them little hinges that swing big doors. Once you really get them, you'll hold the keys to pretty much any future you can imagine. Those three pillars are inspiration to action, know-how, and activity knowledge. Let's kick off with the most critical one, the match that lights the fire, inspiration to action. This is your why. It's the drive, that internal motor, that gets you moving and keeps you moving when things get tough. Without it, nothing else matters. You could have the world's most brilliant plan, but if you don't feel compelled to execute it, you won't. Think back to that 6-year-old in the restaurant. What drove him? Simple. He desperately needed the money. Those newspapers would be worthless if he couldn't move them. His motivation was born from necessity, but inspiration shows up in many disguises. Stone shares this beautiful story about Dr. Lorraine Golden. She was a successful physician with a thriving private practice, pulling in serious income. But she felt this calling. She walked away from all that money to open a children's center for kids with disabilities, believing she could help them walk with her talents and, as she saw it, help from a higher power. One day Stone visited her spotlessly maintained clinic and met a little girl named Jenny. Her mother told him, for the first 4 years of her life, she couldn't walk. We didn't have money, so I brought her here. Dr. Golden found a nerve blockage. Now, Jenny can walk. The mother looked at Stone with tears streaming down her face and said something that hit him like a thunderbolt. Outside my church, this is the only place where I feel the presence of God. Dr. Golden's inspiration wasn't about money at all. It was this deep, selfless urge to serve. That kind of desire is a force of nature. You can't keep it contained. Sometimes inspiration springs from dissatisfaction, but not just any garden variety frustration. Stone calls it inspirational dissatisfaction. It's that feeling that things aren't right, and you're the person who needs to fix it. Consider heavyweight boxer Floyd Patterson. He was on top of the world, champion of everything, and then wham! He got knocked to the canvas and lost his title. The experts wrote him off completely. No heavyweight champion in history had ever won back the crown. But Floyd flat out refused to accept that story. He became wholesomely dissatisfied. He knew he had more to give. That dissatisfaction became rocket fuel. He transformed his mental game, studied relentlessly, actually listened to his trainers, and worked harder than he'd ever worked. When he stepped back into that ring, he was a completely different fighter. He reclaimed his title, shattering the curse, all because inspirational dissatisfaction gave him the fire he needed. So step 1 is finding your why. What genuinely moves you? Is it necessity, a desire to serve others, dissatisfaction with where you are right now? You've got to locate that emotional engine, because logic alone rarely gets you through the brutal times. But raw inspiration without direction is just scattered energy. It can fizzle out, or, even worse, send you charging off in completely the wrong direction. That's where the next 2 pillars save the day: activity knowledge and know-how. Let's separate these two, because they're genuinely different creatures. Activity knowledge is the what. It's the information, the facts, the theory. It's what you absorb from books, teachers, studying. When young Stone was hawking newspapers, his activity knowledge was knowing the headlines. He heard the older kids shouting them, so he knew what to yell. When he jumped into insurance, his activity knowledge came from reading and memorizing that policy until he could recite it backwards. This part is non-negotiable. You can't win in a field where you're completely clueless. You've got to do your homework. But we all know those people who are walking encyclopedias, overflowing with book smarts, yet somehow can't make anything actually happen in the real world. That's because they're missing the third, perhaps most magical ingredient: know-how. Know-how is the how. It's not just knowing what needs doing. It's the skill of doing it effectively, with minimum wasted motion and effort. It's like a grandmother who cooks an incredible meal with a pinch of this and a dash of that. She couldn't write down the exact recipe if her life depended on it, because her know-how lives in her hands, her instincts, her accumulated experience. It's become pure habit. And there's exactly one way to get know-how: by doing, by trying, stumbling, adjusting, and trying again. Stone's story as a teenage insurance salesman is basically a masterclass in this. His mother gave him some basic marching orders: canvass entire office buildings, start at the top floor, hit every single office, and use the line, "May I take a moment of your time?" He was terrified. But he'd learned something as a Boy Scout. When you go for something, don't come back until you get it. So he followed the instructions to the letter. He had the activity knowledge, the policy details, and the inspiration. He wanted to earn money, but he had to develop the know-how through trial by fire. And that's when the real education began. He quickly figured out his opening line was absolutely terrible. People just said no and shut him down. One day a sales manager literally jumped up, pounded his desk, and bellowed, "Boy, as long as you live, never ask a man for his time. Take it." That same day, Stone sold that manager, plus 26 of his salesmen. Lesson learned. He experimented and crafted a new opener. I believe this will interest you also. Nobody ever said no to that. They'd ask, "What is it?" and he was in the door. He also had to wrestle his fear to the ground. The fear of opening closed doors, especially ones with frosted glass where he couldn't see what lurked behind them, was absolutely paralyzing. He tried reasoning with himself. Success is achieved by those who try. Where there's nothing to lose by trying and everything to gain if successful, by all means try. But he discovered logic doesn't always defeat fear. The emotions still gripped him. So he developed what he called a self-starter, a mental trick to force himself into motion, a 3-word phrase: "Do it now." As soon as he left one office, he wouldn't let himself pause even for a second. He'd rush to the next door, and if that wave of fear started rising, he'd mentally shout, "Do it now!" and turn that handle before his brain could stage a mutiny. He realized something profound. Thinking won't overcome fear, but action will. Emotions don't respond to reason, but they do respond to action. He refined his know-how in other clever ways. He learned to control his voice, speaking loudly and rapidly with a smile to project confidence, even when he felt none. He learned to point at the policy while talking, so the prospect's eyes would follow his finger instead of looking at his face and shaking their head. No. He discovered that trying to sell absolutely everyone was exhausting. He set time limits for himself on each call. If he couldn't close in that window, he'd leave pleasantly. This conserved his energy, and, surprisingly, sometimes the prospect would be so thrown by him not arguing that they'd follow him to the next office and buy the policy. Each of these was a brick of know-how, learned not from any book, but from direct, repetitive, sometimes painful experience. He was constructing his system, piece by piece. So we've got the 3 pillars: inspiration to action, the engine; activity knowledge, the map; know-how, the driving skill. When you get all 3 working in harmony, you've got a system that's incredibly powerful. But even with a brilliant system, you can still get stuck if you're in a toxic environment or if your own mind is sabotaging you. This is why Stone hammers home the importance of being a self-builder. A self-builder is someone who grabs the steering wheel of their own life. They don't just let life happen to them, they make things happen. And it starts with two critical decisions: controlling your environment and taking honest inventory of yourself. When high school came around, Stone decided one school was clearly superior to another. So even though it complicated his life, he arranged to move and live with a family in that district, just so he could attend the better school. He made a deliberate choice to position himself in an environment that would help him grow. He says, in the end, your environment will control you, therefore make sure you control your environment. This means choosing your friends, your mentors, and the information you feed your brain very carefully. The second part of being a self-builder is regularly taking inventory of yourself. Stone tells this fantastic story about his banker friend Mike Corrigan. Mike made a terrible loan, lost his bank a mountain of money, and got fired. He was absolutely crushed. His posture, his expression, his voice, everything screamed failure. He couldn't land a new job because his negative energy was radiating off him like heat. A friend gave him a book and suggested he list his assets, not just financial ones, but all the ways he'd helped his previous bank make or save money. Mike did this, but then he went further. He created another list titled My True Assets. On that list, he didn't write about banking skills at all. He wrote, a wonderful wife who meant everything to him, a daughter who brought joy and sunshine into his days, a healthy mind and body, many genuine friends, the privilege of living in America, a house and car completely paid off. As he wrote this list, something fundamental shifted inside him. He realized that despite losing his job, he was still an incredibly wealthy man. The transformation was instant. His confidence surged back. His voice became firm, his smile genuine again. He was no longer a victim. He was a man of real value. Within days, he landed a great position as treasurer of a large hospital. Taking inventory of your true assets reminds you of your inherent worth, which is the bedrock of the confidence you need to chase your goals. But what if the biggest obstacle isn't your circumstances or your environment, but a war raging inside your own head? Stone is crystal clear that the ultimate key to success is character. It's the ability to win the battle with yourself. He tells this heartbreaking story of a great actor he idolized as a boy. The man was brilliant on stage, genuinely talented. Years later, Stone saw him perform again. He was still famous, but he'd become an alcoholic. The audience actually applauded when he stumbled over lines or forgot them completely. They were laughing at him, not with him. He was a great man who'd left his future in the rearview mirror because he lost the inner battle. He lacked character. So how do you build character? How do you win the fight with yourself? Stone introduces this fascinating concept: the power of suggestion, self-suggestion, and autosuggestion. Suggestion is what comes from outside, from people, books, your environment. When I tell you, try to do the right thing because it's right, that's a suggestion. Self-suggestion is when you deliberately grab that idea and repeat it to yourself. It's you consciously programming your own operating system. You're choosing the input. Autosuggestion is where the magic really happens. After you've repeated a self-suggestion enough times, it sinks into your subconscious mind. It becomes automatic. When you face a temptation, the thought, do the right thing, will pop into your mind without any conscious effort. It becomes a reflex. This is how you forge good habits. You deliberately choose a positive thought or self-motivator, like, do it now, or success is achieved by those who try. And you repeat it over and over, with genuine emotion and feeling, especially first thing in the morning and last thing at night. Then, and this is crucial, you act on it the instant it appears in your mind. By cycling through this pattern of thought and action repeatedly, you're carving a new groove in your brain. You're literally constructing character through conscious effort. This brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. You can have the inspiration, the knowledge, the know-how, and the character, but to truly complete the system, you need one more thing: a living philosophy. By 1939, Stone had built an incredibly successful national insurance agency. He felt he'd mastered his system, and then it got tested like never before. While he was relaxing on vacation in Florida, a letter arrived from the insurance company he represented. It stated that in 2 weeks, his license and the licenses of all his thousands of agents would be terminated. The company president was leaving on a trip and couldn't be reached. His entire business, his life's work, was about to evaporate. He had a catastrophically serious problem. What do you do when the ceiling caves in on you? This, he says, is where your faith gets tested for real. It's where your philosophy has to be more than just pretty words. It has to be something you actually live by. He went into his bedroom, alone, for 45 minutes. He didn't panic or rage. First, he knelt and thanked God for his blessings: a healthy body, a sound mind, a wonderful wife and children, the privilege of living in a land of opportunity. Then he prayed for guidance and help, and he believed, truly believed, he would receive it. When he stood up, he'd made 4 resolutions. 1. He wouldn't be fired. 2. He would organize his own insurance company, and by 1956, it would be the largest in its field in the entire United States. 3. He had another personal objective he set for 1956. 4. He would track down and contact the company president, no matter where in the world the man might be. He immediately got into his car, drove to the nearest public phone, and managed to track down that company president. He succeeded because he took immediate, decisive action, guided by his philosophy. He saved his contract, and by 1956, he had indeed built the largest and most successful company of its kind in the nation. He proved his system didn't just work on sunny days. It worked right in the middle of a hurricane. And that's the essence of the success system that never fails. It begins with finding a deep emotional inspiration to action. It requires gaining the necessary activity knowledge through study and the indispensable know-how through practice and real experience. It demands that you become a self-builder, consciously shaping your environment and your character. And it all rests on the foundation of a positive, living philosophy that guides you through the inevitable storms of life. It's a journey from the outside in, learning the facts and skills, but also a journey from the inside out, building the character and mindset that makes success not just possible, but sustainable. When you really strip it down, what W. Clement Stone offers us is a philosophy of radical personal responsibility. In a world that constantly encourages us to hunt for external excuses for our failures, the economy, our childhood, the system, Stone's message is a powerful and refreshing wake-up call that the steering wheel is in our own hands. We get to choose the direction. What strikes me most about this book is its elegant simplicity. The concepts of inspiration to action, know-how, and activity knowledge aren't tangled psychological theories. They're intuitive. They make immediate sense. They feel like truths we already knew, but somehow forgot how to apply. He gives us clear language for the achievement process. The lesson that hits hardest today, I think, is this idea of being a self-builder. We're living in an era of absolutely unprecedented distraction and influence. Our environment isn't just our neighborhood or school anymore. It's the entire digital universe, constantly feeding us suggestions, molding our thoughts, yanking at our attention. Stone's advice to consciously choose your environment and the ideas you expose yourself to is more vital now than it's ever been. Breaking down the unseen walls of our own limited thinking is a daily struggle, and this book hands us the tools to fight it. His relentless emphasis on action is the perfect cure for the paralysis of overthinking. How many times have we been stuck, not because we don't know what to do, but because we're terrified to start? That self-starter phrase, "do it now," is more than just motivational fluff. It's a practical behavioral tool. It's a circuit breaker for procrastination. It builds momentum, and as Stone rightly points out, it takes way more energy to get a stationary object moving than to keep something that's already rolling. So how can you start applying this system today, right this minute? Here are 3 simple actions you can take. First, find your inspiration. Just like Mike Corrigan did, take inventory of your true assets. Grab a piece of paper and write down everything you're genuinely grateful for. The people, your health, your opportunities. Then ask yourself, what do I want to build on this foundation? What's one thing I'm wholesomely dissatisfied with that I actually can change? Find that emotional why and write it somewhere you'll see it every single day. Second, practice one self-starter. For the next week, pick one thing you habitually procrastinate on. Maybe it's starting homework, going for a run, or cleaning your room. The instant you feel that familiar hesitation, say "do it now" out loud, and physically move your body to begin the task within 3 seconds. Don't think, just move. See what happens. Third, learn one piece of know-how. Don't just read about something. Actually do it. Pick a small skill you want to learn. Maybe it's cooking a new dish, learning a few guitar chords, or practicing a new conversation opener. Go through the cycle of trying, making mistakes, learning from them, and trying again. Experience what it feels like to build know-how through your own hands-on effort, not just someone else's explanation. In the end, the success system that never fails isn't a magic wand. It's a commitment. It's the commitment to be an active player in your own life, to direct your thoughts, manage your emotions, and, as Stone so powerfully puts it, to ordain your own destiny. The greatest treasure map he provides doesn't lead to a chest overflowing with gold, but to the revelation that the treasure, the power, the potential, the ability to create the life you want, was inside you the entire time. That was a summary of The Success System That Never Fails by W. Clement Stone. We've covered the core ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a photograph of a magnificent feast. You can see what's on the table, but you can't taste the food. The real nourishment comes from experiencing the book yourself. It's in the dozens of other stories, the simple phrases that seem written specifically for you, and the quiet moments of reflection that can spark genuine change. This summary is a doorway. If anything we've discussed has resonated with you, I encourage you to walk through it. Grab a copy, because reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can fundamentally shift how you see your own potential. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to click that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book from the Billionaire's Bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.